Hello and welcome to episode 72 of Gondor Calls for Ale, a Middle-earth strategy battle games podcast. I am, of course, your host, Sam Gallagher, and I'm all alone this time, not joined by my brother Ben. I don't know about you, but I am feeling episode 72, and before we get into what we are talking about in this episode, despite the fact that I'm doing it going solo, as they say, I am still having an ale because Gondor has in fact called for it. So the ale I am having today is quite obviously an FAQ ale, which is a drink that can only be enjoyed or only comes out twice a year. So what is this episode on a random Monday that we're talking about? Obviously, perhaps you've seen by whatever hilarious, witty title and thumbnail I have given us, or also perhaps guessed by my hilarious ale. I am going to be talking. I keep saying we, but there's no we. It's just me. I'm going to be talking about the FAQ recently released by Games Workshop. So we're like 3-4 days out. I think it came out the Thursday before this episode released. So we're going to go through it all. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to give you my thoughts, my feelings, whether I'm like, why is that a question, or whatever. And then the real reason, and we have a slideshow, as you can see, and there is one reason for having a slideshow. If you're listening, I will describe that reason. If you're viewing, you will see it for yourself. So before we get into all of that, before we move on, I'm going to get in our shameless plugs here. So here we go. The first of which is, of course, to like and subscribe. Like this video, subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. If you're listening, go and subscribe, go and like. It makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside and helps us grow. And one day we too can cover Arda in a second darkness. Or Middle-earth. It would have been better if I said we too can cover Middle-earth in the second darkness. The next one is, of course, that Gondor Calls for Ale now has a Discord. If you want to join our pretty awesome community of Discord members where we discuss all manner of things, including the FAQ, you might already know what my thoughts and feelings are going to be if you're on the Discord. You can join that. There'll be an invitation link in the description of wherever you're listening to or viewing this podcast. We usually have we've been starting to do these hobby spotlights, army list spotlights, where I just in fact put the call out today saying that we're going to be recording another episode coming up, and if you want to have some of your stuff featured on the podcast, you can stick it in the Discord channel and interact with Ben and I and all of our awesome community. The final plug is our Patreon. If you enjoy this episode, if you enjoy any of our content, please consider checking out our Patreon. It really does help. It enables us to do more of this stuff, to get better content, to be more consistent. And if you sign up and join, we can give you some awesome Gondor Calls for Ale dice. They're pretty exclusive, pretty nice. And also we have bonus episodes, half pints as we like to call them. They're a little bit shorter, but we'd like to try and get one of those out a month. We just had one released last week, in fact, where we talked about one of the Birders Horde. That's what we talked about in that half pint. So we've been going through some of these new army lists, giving our thoughts, feelings, and all of that. And finally, we do a monthly hobby hang. We've got one coming up this Friday the 21st of February, if you're listening to this on the day it comes out. So if you still time to go subscribe to the Patreon and jump into that hobby hang. All right. I think that is all the plugs. Getting pretty long, getting pretty saucy. Lots of stuff to check out. Thank you to all our current Patreons. Thank you to all our future Patreons, and thank you for anyone who's listening or watching this. So we're going to move into it. I'm going to be reading them off my phone because, despite the fact that I have this nice slideshow, it's a little small on the screen. I'm doing a nice split screen situation for me to be reading. So we're going to go into it. We're going to go into, as you can see, the FAQ and Achata. I'm going to take a little sip of my drink, wet my whistle. Okay, we're going to start. We're going to start with the armies of the Lord of the Rings. If you're not sure, you can find all of these FAQs downloadable on the Warhammer community website. I'll just put them up on the screen because there's something to do, and as I said, there is a reason at the end. So the first one is a question that needed answering for somebody or some bodies. In Legolas's Deadly Shot special rule, does the "so long as he has the infantry keyword" caveat apply only to suffering the -1 penalty to hit for moving and shooting part of the rule, or also being allowed to make shooting attacks whilst engaged in combat part of the rule? This is on page 14 if you care to know. The answer to this was the caveat only applies for suffering the -1 penalty for moving and shooting. Legolas may still make shooting attacks whilst engaged in combat if he's mounted. I think this was that was a weirdly worded question that actually took me going back and reading the rule to figure out what it means. Kind of makes sense. He can't. It would be pretty gross if you could move 5 inches and still hit on 2s. But you can still charge in as a cavalry model and shoot in combat, which is kind of crazy. Legolas, well good this edition. All right, moving on. In the Road to Helm's Deep list, if Gimli is taken as a passenger on Legolas, can he also lead a warband? The answer is, of course, no. That would be some of these questions I don't understand. Okay, some of these questions I understand how they're questions. They have a question mark at the end of them. No, I understand that they're not necessarily like explicitly stated, but also you're like, okay, well, Legolas and Gimli, I think are both. Let's say they're both heroes of fortitude. They might be valor. I don't know, but let's say you play this Road to Helm's Deep at some crazy points level, and you fill both of their warbands. You put one hero down. What in your mind are you like? I've put Legolas down. I've put his warband down. And then there's a separate thing. I put Gimli now on Legolas's horse and then his warband, or are you deploying 2 at once? I'm just not sure how anyone was confused as to whether that was a thing, but it's not a thing anymore. The Road to Helm's Deep causing many questions here. So in the Road to Helm's Deep army list, can Harmer benefit from the back on your horse's special rule, as he cannot normally have a horse? The answer is no. Kind of interesting. I haven't really read that army super deeply, and it's kind of funny that there's a hero you can take but not put on a horse. And also, this feels like it's in keeping with the desire to keep only models around that have official models and not do a conversion. But I guess kind of interesting or funny. If you are unaware, that rule means that if a hero has the infantry keyword, he can basically like kick a warrior model off his horse and take his horse and ride again. And then we have in the Realms of Men army list, what heroic tier are the hero models include the other hero models included in the army? So your captains and stuff. Any hero model included in the army, with the exception of Kings of Men, will be classed as heroes of fortitude. Makes sense that it's basically just captains. I can't think of any other non-named heroes you can take anymore. I think they've done away with the King's Huntsman and Knights of the White Tower, so it's just captains. Obviously, you can take siege veterans as per this FAQ, they would count as heroes of fortitude. I don't actually think it makes a difference in this, because they can only lead. You can't add models to their warband, I don't believe. I went through and looked, and I don't see the old restriction of you must have a hero of fortitude per each siege engine in the book anymore. Maybe I'm wrong, and if there is that restriction, then it's pretty explicitly stated that this hero is a minor hero. So yeah, I suppose if that's a rule, you could game the system, have 7 Wind Lancers with a King of Dale if you really wanted to. But yeah, a bit of clarity there, I guess. Definitely nice to know that the captains are fortitude. And then we've got, does the Crown of Morgul prevent a model from benefiting from the standfast of a friendly hero? The answer is no. Interesting. I was pretty sure that the Crown of Morgul just meant that you never automatically passed the courage test. I assumed or thought it was specifically in charging the Witch King, which is, I think now is that is more clear. But that would be wild if you couldn't benefit from Standfast. I love that you can't benefit from Bodyguard or whatever when you charge the Witch King. That's super cool. Alrighty. When a Mordor/Isengard Warg Rider dismounts, what war gear does he get to keep? This is a bit of a weird one. So the war gear a Mordor/Isengard Warg Rider is allowed to keep will depend on the war gear they had whilst mounted, as described below. So if you were we're just going to call them Mordor. We're just going to say Warg Riders, I guess. If you were a Warg Rider, armed with shield and throwing spears, you get to be an Orc Warrior with shield. If you're a Warg Rider with a bow, you get to be an Orc Warrior with bow. That makes sense. If you're a Warg Rider with shield, you get to be an Orc Warrior with shield. If you are a Warg Rider with throwing spears, you get to be an Orc Warrior with spear. Kind of interesting, because I think the Warriors of Rohan, it just says you get to, like, you have to throw away equipment until you're a legal model. And they come with shield, bow, and then you could obviously buy them throwing spears. And they can have shield and throwing spears, so they can throw away the bow. They can, or if you want them to have the bow, they have to throw away both the shield and the throwing spears. And I suppose if you wanted to, you could throw away both the spear and the bow and just be a warrior with shield. I don't know why you would do that, but I think you could. But it's a bit weird that if you're an Orc Warrior or an Orc with a shield and throwing spears on a Warg, you don't get the choice of dropping your shield to be a spear Orc. Bit weird, but mostly here nor there. But I guess nice to have that clarified. Doesn't quite feel in line with how it works with some of the other models. And now we're moving on. We've got what happens with Grima Wormtongues, a traitor within special rule, if he is taken in an army that does not include Saruman. If Grima is taken in an army that does not include Saruman, then he must deploy as part of the enemy's army and will begin the game already revealed and treated as a normal model, just as if Saruman had been slain. Makes sense. Kind of a little bit silly. I mean, a little bit silly. I guess I can see the argument. Because I think the muster of Isengard you have to have Saruman, so it doesn't matter. So I think it's just the army of the White Hand, and Grima is really, really good. But so I guess like maybe you're willing to just have a horde of wild men and Uruk-hai and orcs, and you were just going to throw Grima in, but you just wanted an absolute horde of models. Fine. I could see more of an argument if your muster of Isengard army didn't have to take Saruman, so I might be wrong and that might be the case. And then your orcs, your Uruk-hai captains get strike, you get hatred men, so you're like I could see I'm just going to pay 25 points to basically hold or take objectives or mess with them, and I'm fine with just being Tin Can Uruk-hai otherwise. But you will certainly not be doing that, because otherwise you'd just be throwing away 25 points. Okay, moving on to page 2. We have some erratas, so I think this is all like pretty straightforward stuff. We've got Haleth, Prince of Rohan, add the option for throwing spears. This is for 5 points, pretty cool, totally makes sense. The model comes with optional throwing spear. Again, Haleth, Prince of Rohan. Okay, so that's adding it to his base profile, and then this is adding it to the army of Edoras, I believe, on page 103. Throwing spears is an option, also 5 points. Totally makes sense. Freyla, first marshal of the Riddermark, option, remove an option for a bow. That's a bummer. It's not a bummer, who cares, you'll probably never take it, but it is funny because he does use a bow in the movie. I'm assuming that whenever that model comes out, it's just not going to come with a bow option, and therefore they were like, meh. Again, we weren't ever really going to take that, probably. P.S. I'm super excited for that model to come out. Page 103. Ooh, this is a nice one to see. Rohan Royal Guard options add horse and throwing spear for 7 points. The army of Edoras couldn't actually take Royal Guard with horse and throwing spear. It was Royal Guard, and you could either take, it was an option for horse, option for throwing spear. They were both pointed the same, but given that the profile for them says you can only pick one of these options, you technically couldn't have it. Now you can. I think just an oversight and totally makes sense. And then on page 115, Kirith Ungol, additional rules, add the following. Orc models may only be included in the warbands of an Orc hero. Uruk-hai models may only be included in the warband of an Uruk-hai hero. I really thought that was already in there. I'm actually going to look, because maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't, and because I was semi-disappointed that, like, one of them, like, still had that rule, and I bet it's not, and I was like, oh, that's so neat that you can now, like, have combined warbands, which I guess makes sense that you can't, but it does mean that, like, games where they split up or whatever, it's slightly disappointing. Yeah, that's weird. In my digital copy, I have Orc heroes may only include Orc warrior models in their warband. Uruk-hai heroes may only include Uruk-hai warrior models in their... Oh. Huh. Yeah, that's a bizarre one. That's already in the book. I'll check my physical book later. And then finally, the Muster of Isengard. Add the following independent hero. Uruk-hai drummer. Not bad. Definitely nice to have a drum. So there we go. That is the entirety of the FAQs for the armies of the Lord of the Rings and War of the Rohirrim. I don't think there were any other questions that I had that would have liked to have been FAQ'd. I mean, I would have loved it if, Gothmog's 2 attacks had been an accidental mistake, but I didn't really expect that to be the case. We're going to move into The Hobbit now. Just 1 page of FAQs. I should note that they also, like, these FAQs, they specifically said in the article, they specifically called it out. These are just answering FAQs in the rafters for stuff that's missed. This is not an attempt. There is no attempt here to balance the game because they just don't have the data yet, which makes sense. It's only been out for like 3 or 4 months at this point, so I get it. While there's some stuff, again, that I'm like, oh, I would like to see, like, Gothmog's points go down because of, he's lost the attack and he just really doesn't seem worth the 130 points compared to some other heroes at a similar points level. Or, like, Eagles go... So, there's some stuff I could certainly see changing. But, we'll wait 6 months. We'll get another one. It'll be fine. Okay, we've got the same question about Legolas, because he's in every book ever. Yes, he is too good, and yes, he can still shoot into combat while on horseback. And here we go. The first new question that needs answering. Do Gwaihir or Great Eagle mounts for Radagast count towards the number of Great Eagles in your army, working out how many fledgling Great Eagles you can take? The answer is Gwaihir does not count towards the number of Great Eagles, as he does not use the Great Eagle profile. Totally makes sense. If Radagast takes a Great Eagle as a mount, that will count towards the number of Great Eagles taken. I'm not quite sure why there was a confusion here. It kind of feels like they could have used keywords. They have keywords in the game. Kind of feels like it could have been like keyword Great Eagle and like warrior Great Eagles or something. Whatever. This is, I think, makes sense. I'm fine with Radagast's mount, making you be able to take more fledglings. You know what? In some ways, I kind of wish it was actually the other way around, thinking about it. I think this would be a way you could balance Eagles, is if you had to take, if it was like for every fledgling you could take a Great Eagle, it would make it more restrictive at what points values you could play. Again, you'd be an army that you're like, well, I can only play them at, I'm either playing 50 points down or playing them at a 50-point increment. But the Great Eagles, the fledgling Eagles are definitely more dealable with than the Great Eagles. And then here we go. The next question is, Nazgul of Dol Guldur is resurrected via their unholy resurrection special rule. Do any might, will, and fate points that were spent remain spent? The answer is yes. This feels like somebody was very hopeful. And again, it doesn't explicitly say that, but can you imagine? You're like, oh, I died, I get 2 might back. You just like blow that might every time. So that is a bit of a silly question to me, but glad it got answered. And here we go. Mirkwood Elf Warriors change their strength characteristic to 3. Anyone who thought that they should have been strength 4 is like wild. It was funny, these FAQs were like half put up like a day early, and the ones from the launch had been removed, and there was, you know, the few people who were like, oh, it's happening! Like, gotta go beat some people up with my strength 4 Mirkwood Elves again. So they're strength 3, as they should be. They are only elves, after all. And now we've got Radagast the Brown. Magical powers change the range. So this is, we're into erratas, obviously. Change the range of Nature's Wrath to 3. It was self, which makes sense that it's been changed to a range of 3. I think Nature's Wrath might state in the spell itself that it has a range, but I could be wrong. Probably wrong on that. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's now range 3. Survivors of Laketown Master Burglar. Remove the first sentence, which reads, whilst Bilbo is holding an objective marker in a scenario where this is relevant, he increases his attacks to 2. He's base 2 attacks. Would have been cool if it had been increases his attacks to 3. That would have been super, super fun and really thematic. But I mean, also kind of gross because he's, I think... No, I don't think he still has the, like, Bat Swarm effect on his ring. Or it's like, it's as all of the other ring bearers are, which is if they're the only model fighting. Then we've got the White Council army composition. Change Elrond, Master of Rivendell's points to 170. 170. He gets a 10-point decrease. I'm not sure why. He's probably got something in that base profile that he doesn't have in the White Council. And then we've got Felwag, change the base size to 40mm. It was saying it was 25, obviously just a mistake. And then we've got Goblin, Captain, change the warrior keyword to hero. There we go. Look at that. Clarifying. And then moving on into the core rules. I think this was the part that was sort of more... more potentially exciting, or some stuff where it's like, this is great to get clarified, and we really did. So the first question, the first frequently asked question, I would love to know what the frequency of these questions are. Like, give me the data. Like, how many people asked if what was one I was complaining about? Like the Nazgul come back with all of their might, will, and fate. Like 10 people asked that. Jeez, got some powery gamers over there. All right, so the first question here is, a model has a special rule that states it must charge if it must... I'm going to start again. A model has a special rule that states it must charge when it moves if able. Can you choose to not move and therefore not charge? No. The model will follow the steps of activation phase, the second of which is the start of move. If at this stage the model could charge, it must do so. Totally makes sense. It would be kind of hilarious to be like, well, I'm not actually moving, so I'm calm now. As soon as I move a single inch, then the fury takes me. But that makes sense. I was watching a battle report of the old Ride Out. I'm talking about how it's not great, and because everyone's forced to charge, and I think that's probably true. I think it certainly is not a great list. I do think it's a super cool one, but interesting to note that you do have Aragorn, who is a mighty hero who can just call a free march every turn, and then you can't charge, so you don't have to. So you can just skirmish while marching. You have to keep it a more death ball, but anyway, that's a little off the top of the dome suggestion. All right, moving on. If a hero dismounts for whatever reason and that hero has selected multiple pieces of war gear, are they forced to discard chosen war gear if there is no legal model to represent them on foot in the same manner as a warrior? I love this answer. This is so nice. No, hero models are exempt from this rule. Really, really cool. Not super... doesn't have a huge number of effects. I think some of the big ones are like Boromir. I think Boromir would have had, if he had the flag, would have had to throw away his shield if they were following this. But it's just nice that you're not paying a lot for something, you get dismounted, and then you're like, well, there's no model for this, so I have to get rid of it. I'm fine with it for warrior models, makes sense. You know, in some ways it's a shame because I scrounged up as many shields or whatever as possible to put them on all my orc warriors, and now they can't take them. So it's just like, it would be nice if I just never had to bother with that. But good change, or good clarification. Next, if a model fighting a monster is being supported by a model with a pike, who is then themselves being supported by another model with a pike, and the monster slays the model it is in combat with, does the monster get to make its free strike on each of the pikes that we're supporting? The answer is yes. I would never have guessed that this was what they were going to rule. This is just another bonus to monsters. So cool. There aren't a huge number of pike armies, but super, super cool. I absolutely love it. And from reading that, I'm assuming that like I kill, Model A is in combat with the monster, B and C are pike supporting. I'm assuming I kill Model A and then I roll 2 dice. I'm like, here's B, here's C. It's not kill Model A, killed Model B. Now I get to roll on C. I think it's if you have pikes, you just get to roll against them. Love it. Makes monsters super good. Monsters were already great. I'm all for making monsters amazing. And then if a model has Fearful, special rule, and wishes to charge a model with Terror, special rule, how many courage tests does it need to take? So Fearful is you have to take a courage test every time you wish to charge. Ponies used to have it, still do, but there are other models that do it, like the Master of Lake Town. It's such a cool, I love the rule. Such a cool, flavorful rule. 2, 1 for each special rule that requires a courage test. There you go. Pretty cool. Otherwise, Fearful models would be better at, or would be as good at charging terrifying models as regular models, so that makes sense to me. Next, if a cavalry model with the monstrous charge special rule charges into combat, do they gain +1 or +2 attacks? I'm very glad they clarified this. I'm also glad that they clarified it in the way that I think makes sense. And kind of anyone who was assuming this was playing it the other way was making a big assumption, I think. They will gain +1 attacks. The 2 special rules do not stack. They've never stacked. It's not been a thing. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, and I think it's fine. I guess it makes, because like Radagast was getting something stupid like 5 attacks if on a Grey Eagle, if you were like ruling it that way. And, like your ring raids on Fell Beasts, 4 attacks on the charge, like, geez. I think this is fine. Can objective markers or markers that are placed as part of a model's special rules, such as the Vines marker from the Riding Vines magical powers, or the marker placed as part of the Invoke the Bruinen special rule from the Rivendell army list, be placed underneath the bases of other models? The answer is no. I guess this potentially leads to some weird situations where somebody has so many models they can stop you from placing markers. I don't actually know what the Invoke the Bruinen does, so I don't know how relevant or not. I think it's you place a marker and then everyone in a line gets knocked down. So I guess if you were good enough with your model placements and stuff, you could I don't know if it's a range of a character, but you potentially might make it difficult for them to get useful placement on that. And then another question that desperately needs to be answered here is: objective markers state that models cannot finish its move overlapping them. Is this also true for markers that are placed as part of a model's special rule, such as the Vines marker from the Riding Vines special rule, or a marker placed as part of the Invoke the Bruinen special rule from the Rivendell army? No, models may move over these markers and end overlapping them unless otherwise specified. However, many of these markers are required to be removed at the end of the phase. Players need to be careful when removing them so that they do not move models overlapping them from their original position. Makes sense. It would make the Riding Vines really good, because not only would you be putting down an area of difficult terrain, you'd also be putting down basically immovable, or you could put them down at 6 inches exactly, and models wouldn't be able. I guess that wouldn't work because they're different. But you could put them in such a way that models wouldn't be able to move past them, which is so nice that that's clarified. And here we go into the final page for the FAQ and errata we've got going on, which is the errata for the main rules of the Middle-earth strategy battle game. We have on page 64, mount Add the following to the end of the paragraph. A mount that is also a hero cannot declare heroic actions. Sure, makes sense. And then we've got on page 97, War Beast, immovable object. Add the following rule to the end of add the following to the end of the paragraph. A War Beast is completely unaffected by special rules that would prevent them from activating, moving its full move value, or that would attempt to move it. So I guess you can't Spectre, Fell Light, or Temptation of Sauron a War Beast. Pretty nice, pretty cool. And then on page 104, again, the fact that anyone tried to play this the other way is just, I'm just like, okay, bud. Add the following to the end of the fourth paragraph. This is for spears. A model may only gain support from one spear-armed model at a time. No, you cannot get, 3 dudes spear supporting through one model. Totally makes sense. Totally fine. Cool. So there we have it. So that is all of the FAQs and erratas for this. I guess the sort of left out stuff was the Angmar PDF, which I think makes sense that it was left out because it might be changing. We don't know when we're getting the Armies of Middle-earth book, and all that stuff is going to be in there. And I think, really, I haven't super read all of it. Obviously, I've played some Burder's Horde, but it all seems to make sense to me. The big one that people are like about is Gulavar's 6-inch movement. So he has fly, but only a move of 6, and now fly doesn't make you move 12. It's just changes how you move, so the Eagles are move 12. I'm pretty sure this is the deal. I should probably check before I really get into that. So let's just look. Let's just find an eagle. Finding eagle. Where are they? Anyway, so while I quickly skim through here and look at attempt to find eagles, man, that further forward in the book. Here we go. Yes, yeah. So that's right. So Gwaihir has moved 12 and has fly. So you can fly over things 12 inches. Gulavar only moves 6 and fly. Who cares? I still think he's an absolute monster. He's not, I'm jumping over your lines and eating all of your heroes, which I think is better because he was just oppressive and too good for most of last edition, especially combined with magic. Yeah, sure, there's an argument that magic's weaker, but paralyze isn't that much weaker. Still paralyze your big hero and then eat him with Gulavar sucks for the opponent being involved in that, I think. Yeah, I think it's fine. I think it was intentional. I don't think it was a mistake. I'm a little annoyed. I've already seen one event that's or I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen some people being like, well, we've been playing him as move 12 and we're going to keep playing him as move 12. That feels like, I understand you're disappointed about your hero not being what you think he is, but that's me saying, I'm pretty sure that Gothmog's 2 attacks was a mistake, so I'm going to play. He was 3 attacks, so I'm going to play him as 3 attacks. Now I can't say that because they've gone through and corrected mistakes in the book. But so just because they haven't explicitly done your FAQ, you need to play it as rules is written, right? It's either that or it's the point of the FAQs and stuff isn't. I guess that's the thing, right? Is sure, then I'm an ass for saying why were you supporting one model with multiple spears? Because rules is written, you kind of could, and I don't know, man. I just think it's kind of ridiculous. I think he's still fine. I think that army's not overly fun to play against, and just deal with it, And I would. So that's my annoyed sort of version of that. I would also say that the best way to, not the best way, the way I like to play and handle this stuff is, let's say I was big fan of Gulavar. He'd never done me dirty. I think he's totally fair and reasonable and a beautiful model and makes sense to have in the game. All of this stuff that's not true. But let's say that was true. Let's live in the reality where Sam is pro Gulavar. I would play him. I would play him as 6-inch fly. I would be like, whew, it's not great, but love Gulavar, so I'm still going to play him. And then, when his rules come out, if they are like, whoops, my bad, he's 12 inches, then you're suddenly like, holy crap, this is amazing. Gulavar's back to what he's doing. He's here, he's there, he's every fucking where. He's Gulavar, or Roy Kent, depending. But if you play him as 12 inches, and then that book comes out and it's still 6, then you're just like, oh, well, I was playing it the better way, and now I'm like, well, I can't take this character because he's bad. So if you play it in the way that's the worst for you possible, and it can only get better, is kind of my view of that, and it's certainly how I would play it. And I think if 6 inches off your move means you can't play that model, then play a different army, man. Play that army led by the shade of, or the shadow of Rudar. Alright, here we go. So, there's my soapbox. Who cares? Moving on. This is why we had a slideshow in this episode. This was a good day. This was, the reason Ben's not with me recording today is he's still in absolute shock and out celebrating. He's been non-stop celebrating since Thursday because Bolg is getting a new glorious plastic model. Bolg, his Warg was a 40mm base. Everyone was confused. How can I fit silly stretch Warg that's a bad model on said 40mm base? Clearly it's a mistake. Clearly I have to put him so he's standing on his tippy toes and blah 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 blah. And you were all wrong, for there is a beautiful, beautiful new Bolg in town. This model is absolutely awesome. I saw this model, and it's plastic. Freaking amazing. I saw this model and was like, man, now I want Bolg's to have be a hero, because that is a badass looking Warg. It's like when he leaps down from the cliff when you sort of first meet him in the Desolation of Smaug, I think is the second movie there. Man, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's cool he's got the bow. I don't think I'll ever play Bolg with the bow, but nice that there is an option to model that if you so desire. Yeah, any new model's a good model in my book, or good to have. Again, there are certainly models that I'm like, it's not my favorite sculpt, but I think this one is really good. I think it's going to be really cool. It's certainly going to make me want to play Bolg more than Azog. We can dream. We can dare to dream. I don't think this is the reality, but it would be super, super cool if new Plastic Bolg came out and we get new Gundabad Warriors. I wouldn't care if they were plastic. That would be super sick. I'd be pumped about that, but I would be fine if they were Forge World resin. Just the current ones are very mushy. They're fine cast, which is annoying to work with unless you want to chop them up and convert them, but Forge World resin is easy enough to do that too. So it would be really, really cool to get some new, very detailed, really nice looking Gundabad Orcs to go along with the super sick Bolg. Same with Nazog, but I'll take any new model we're given, and this is a glorious one. So there we have it, and that is episode 72, a little bit of a shorter one. I still managed to get to around the 40-minute mark just rambling by myself. You've heard quite a lot from Sam, which is what all the hobbits really wanted to. They wanted to hear more about Sam, because Frodo wouldn't have gotten very far without Sam. So we can say Gondor Calls for Ale wouldn't have gotten very far without Sam, and that's why you hear more from me. No, I joke. It is a team effort for sure. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We appreciate all of your support. Thank you for being Patreons if you are them, and please again consider checking out our Patreon. Speaking of checking things out, I will use this last moments to plug the Baron of Dice, our official sponsor. That is right. If you want to use that new Bolg and you want to get him to Master of Battle much faster, the key is to roll 6s, and with the Baron of Dice's beautiful hand-swirled resin dice with no micro bubbles, we can guarantee that you'll roll 6s for at least some of the time. So if you want to get yourself a set of those awesome dice that are themed for Middle-earth, you can find the link in the description of wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. You can also find a nice promo code to get yourself a discount. That promo code is capital G, capital C, capital A. Again, also in the link or also in the description of the episode. Again, thank you for listening. We'll be back in a few short days with episode 73. Which we'll be talking about. I think it'll be a talking head episode, so no tournaments to report on. But we look forward to hearing from you all. Please consider joining the Discord. Drop us a comment. We try and get back to them all. And yeah, until next time. Thank you for listening to Gondor Calls for Ale. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. We, at Gondor Calls for Ale, are officially sponsored by the Baron of Dice, the producer of premium wargaming dice. These beautifully hand-swirled resin dice have no micro bubbles and are therefore perfectly balanced. With over 3,000 variants and unique designs, nearly every tabletop gaming system is represented. So check out the description of this episode for a link and a discount code. Go buy yourself some new dice and let the good times roll. We at Gondor Calls for Ale are not associated with Games Workshop, New Line Cinema, or the Tolkien Estate. We hope we have not misrepresented or offended anyone. These recordings are strictly recollections of games we've played and are not commentaries on the character or competence of our opponents. They are intended purely for entertainment, and we hope they will be taken as such. You can find us on Patreon, see the link in the description. Supporting Gondor Calls for Ale there helps us continue to produce these episodes. You can find us on Instagram at Gondor_calls_for_ale. Feel free to send us a message there. Or on Facebook as Gondor Calls for Ale, another great place to send us a message. Or you can send us an email at gondorcallsforale@gmail.com. As Boromir, Captain of the White Tower, once said, remember today, listener, today this episode was good.